Hello everyone, welcome back to the Trumpet Daily. This year there have been so many crises around the globe. It's been hard just to keep track of them all. Syria, Iraq, Ukraine, Russia, the Rio Grande, the Central African Republic, South Sudan, Libya, of course Gaza. Every single day, we're seeing one train wreck after another, more lawlessness, more extremism, more suffering. The top stories are all crisis after crisis after crisis. Before you can even try to comprehend the torment people are going through in one country, here comes an even worse report from another country. It takes a couple days just to cycle through all the disasters. The number of people who have recently been imprisoned or tortured or killed is overwhelming. But there's another trend we need to look at today that is really disturbing. It's a gauge of the overall stability of the world as a whole. And in terms of numbers, it's bigger than all of those statistics combined. It comes from a recent report from the United Nations Human Rights Council. According to their figures, the number of displaced people in the world is now more than 50 million. 50 million people. 50 million people are facing disasters in their homeland. 50 million people are unable to build a stable life for themselves and their families. 50 million people have no real home. We see this parade of conflict and violence on our screens every day. As we move on to another report, or as we move on with our daily lives, it's easy to forget that those people are still there. They're still suffering. And they're piling up by the millions. According to statistics from the European Union, 9 million people in Syria have fled their homes. 2.5 million of them have fled the country. The New York Times recently made this amazing observation about Syria. It said in 2008, it was the world's second largest refugee hosting country. By 2013, it was the world's second largest refugee producing country. In Iraq, 500,000 people are already displaced. And ISIS gunmen seem like they're just getting started in some ways. In the Central African Republic, more than 400,000 people are displaced. In the past 2.5 years, that number has increased 425%. In South Sudan, more than 234,000 people are displaced, and that country is facing the threat of famine and war. In Gaza, roughly 425,000 people are displaced. In Ukraine, the figure stands at 117,000. These are people who are on the streets, whose front yards are now battlefields. As the New York Times column brings out, the movements of refugees are a glimpse into the trouble spots of the world. Even here in the United States, we've seen tens of thousands of illegal immigrants from Central America and, of course, Mexico, leaving their homes far behind and flooding across the border. We recently told you about the Jews in France, fleeing by the thousands because of the surge in anti-Semitism in Europe. In the Middle East, Christians are leaving en masse because of even more violent religious persecution. Here's the most striking part of that UN report. That 50 million figure is the highest it's been since the aftermath of World War II. So think about that for a second. Judging purely by the number of people who are displaced by crises right now, you'd think we are recovering from a world war. This statistic is not one that we hear a lot about, but it's a very good gauge, as I said earlier, of how stable the world is. For 50 million people, these crises are not something they watch in the nightly news. They're reality. And this worsening situation is prophesied in your Bible. Jesus Christ himself was a prophet, and he prophesied that there would be wars and rumors of wars, suffering on a scale it has never before been, not even in World War II. But Christ also prophesied that there would be hope. If you want to prove for yourself what is ahead for those 50 million refugees, and for the rest of us as well, we recommend you request The Wonderful World Tomorrow. It's by Herbert W. Armstrong, and it's a wonderful book because it shows you not only the prophecies about our world today and what's about to happen to it, it shows you in colorful detail dozens of prophecies of what the world will be like after Jesus Christ returns. I hope you'll request it. It's a book you can come back to over and over again, and it just lifts you up and gives you hope. Hope for those millions of people without a home, and hope for this dying world.